Ah, James Bond. Everyone has at least seen one of the James Bond movies, and by the end of that movie, you've definitely wondered, how the fuck is Bond not dead? Well, in this video, we're going to be stepping into the shoes of an ex-MI6 agent turned James Bond villain, and seeing if he could have made better decisions and ultimately beaten James Bond in the 2012 Skyfall movie. So this time, maybe the villain will finally win at least once. I'm also going to be breaking down the film for anyone who perhaps hasn't seen the movie or doesn't remember what happened. So our movie begins with James Bond walking into a dark hallway and entering an ominous room. Inside, there are multiple dead secret agents and a hard drive missing from a computer, which apparently was very important. It's honestly pure luck that the villains were able to get to this hard drive in the first place. The MI6 agents guarding it were completely incompetent and just left this important hard drive plugged into a laptop, placed randomly on a desk rather than in a safe or something. Getting back to the movie, Bond walks back outside and we can see they're on the streets of Istanbul. I was only able to figure this out because I've been playing way too much GeoGuessr. Here he's picked up by Moneypenny, his sidekick slash assistant slash secret lover slash secretary slash fellow field agent. And together they go after whoever stole this hard drive. They figured out that he's in a black Audi, and after a short chase they're able to ram him off the side of the road. It turns out that the person in the car wasn't actually the villain himself, but one of the villain's henchmen, and him and Bond get into a firefight. My only question for the villain's henchman here is, why is he just standing tall in the open like a teenager's erection on a warm summer morning? He's lucky he didn't get hit by one of Bond's bullets, so to prevent this, he definitely should have taken some cover behind his car door. Bond and the henchmen eventually get onto motorbikes and they start an intense chase on the rooftops. Eventually, Bond is able to catch up with the henchmen and they end up fighting on top of a train. Moneypenny, who had been chasing them by a car this entire time, is forced to take a risky sniper shot to try to kill the henchman before he gets into a tunnel and escapes with the hard drive. However, she unfortunately hits Bond and allows the henchman to escape. Or should I say, fortunately she hits Bond, since we're on the villain side this video. And here's where the movie officially starts. Of course, is the usual James Bond cinematic with the movie song. And personally, I really like this one, so if you haven't heard it already, I strongly recommend you check it out. It takes a little bit for the villain to show back up again, but I'll do a quick recap just so everyone knows what's happening up till that point. So when the movie officially starts, we follow M, who is basically the leader of all the spies, and she watches as the MI6 office is hacked. By the time she arrives at her office, it fucking explodes. Well, that is one way to start a movie. And also talk about having a bad day at work, because this seems a little worse than a bad cup of coffee. We then cut over to James Bond, who seems to be having a really great time. So Bond has been presumed dead after getting shot off the train, and he's been using this time to retire and live life to the fullest. Well, he doesn't stay retired for too long, because when M returns to her apartment, she sees James Bond sitting right there. If she was any younger, you'd assume Bond has some ulterior motives, but he actually just wants to re-enlist as a spy. So they bring him to the London Underground, to an old World War II bunker that's been refurbished to be the new MI6 headquarters. Here, Bond undergoes various psychological and physical tests to see if he's still fit for service. Well, he fails all the tests, but they choose to hire him anyways, because he's really the best they've got. Using a knife, Bond removes the bullet shrapnel from its body, and they analyze it and find it's extremely rare and expensive, so they're able to quickly trace it to one of the few people that own it, and it's the henchman. This is where the henchman makes a big mistake. Why would he be using rounds that is so easy to identify? This is just gonna get him caught very easily, and it's not like different bullets will make a big difference when you're shooting at a person. And with some help from their CIA friends, Bond is able to figure out that this dude is gonna be in Shanghai soon, so Bond makes a beeline straight to Shanghai. Here he goes and meets up with an agent known as Q, and if you haven't been living under a rock, you'd know that Q is the dude that gives Bond all his gadgets. However, in this movie, the gadgets seem to be a step down from the usual ones. It's literally just a gun that can only be fired with your fingerprints and a GPS system that's a tiny radio. You could literally buy those two off of eBay, compared to previous movies where there's things such as cars that can turn completely invisible. Later, Bond is tailing the henchman and he's brought to a tall building. Here, the villain kills a security guard in plain view of everyone and enters the elevator. I would strongly suggest luring the guard to an area that isn't a display case to the general public before shooting him. Because if someone happened to see what you did, you could have both cops and James Bond to worry about. Luckily for the henchman, no one actually sees it and he goes up an elevator. But unluckily for him, James Bond is somehow superhuman and he grabs onto the elevator just before it leaves the ground and then hangs on there for a long time. I say superhuman, maybe because I'm just super skinny and unfit. When going up the elevator though, the henchman for some reason removes his silencer. I don't understand why you would do this. Just keep the silencer on in case you need to shoot anyone else. This way it won't alert any other guards to the the area. The henchman then steps off the elevator and goes to set up his sniper rifle, where he snipes a high-profile target he's getting paid to kill, basically. After the snipe, he sees Bond's reflection in the glass, so he quickly turns around and takes a shot with his sniper rifle. This is not a good idea because a sniper rifle is not usually effective at close range, and if you miss the first shot, there's a long time before you can take your second shot. Instead, what he should have done is drawn the pistol in his pocket from earlier. This way, even if he missed first shot, he would have multiple other shots to try to kill him. But because the henchman missed his first shot with the sniper and didn't use his handgun, him and Bond eventually get into a fistfight, where the henchman loses and it sends him tumbling off the side of the building. James Bond catches the henchman as he's dangling off the side of a building. However, the henchman doesn't reveal his boss's name and falls to his death. This is a good move on the villain's part, on hiring people that at least don't snitch on him the instant they get the chance. But what this henchman could have done is attempted to take James Bond down with him. We could see that Bond is not in a very secure position when holding all this dude's weight. So if this dude rocked up and down on James Bond's arm like a porn star jumps on Johnny Sin's dick, he might be able to take Bond down with him, which would definitely be a win for the villains. Because Bond lived, he's able to look through the henchman's briefcase, which includes a strange coin that Bond eventually tracks to a nearby casino. Meanwhile, back at MI6 headquarters, M seems to be having a little bit of a computer problem, and when she clicks the link that was in the virus, it shows that 5 of her secret agents' identities have been exposed. And this is all because of that stolen hard drive from earlier. But this is also where the villains made the biggest mistake that the good guys didn't even catch. They uploaded all the agents' names to YouTube, where no one would see it. Like, come on, who in their right mind would search up agents revealed? Also, they published the remaining agents as unlisted videos to be released later. The police authorities could have just asked the YouTube company to take all these down, considering it's a national level threat. Finally, YouTube could track all users, so even if the villain is a crazy hacker, which he is, they probably could have still gotten some information with their own hackers. Instead, they could have just sent an email to every dictator that had a spy in their country. This way the dictator would dispose of the spy for them. On the other side of the world, Bond goes to a casino in Macau to cash in the criminal's chip. There he meets Moneypenny and they go together. There, he's able to cash in the chip for a hefty bounty, as it was supposed to be pay for the henchman sniping the dude off the tower. Bond is then approached by a girl named Severine, who used to be the henchman's accomplice, and with a few drinks he's able to figure out she's a former sex slave that was rescued by the criminal and forced to work with him. Just then, the villains figure out that Bond is at the casino, so they send a few men after him. The big mistake is none of these men even have guns. Even if they wanted Bond alive, they should definitely have brought tranquilizer darts or something like that, because fighting one-on-one or one-on-3 with Bond is usually not a great idea. After winning the fight, James Bond goes back to find Severine, and he gets in her boat. And when I say he gets in her boat, I say he gets into her boat. Bond promises if Severine can get him to the main villain's place, he will kill him and free her. So they drive by a boat to the main villain's island. Here, Bond is tied down to the chair, and we're introduced to the main villain for the first time. His name is Silva, and he's a former MI6 agent that was quote-unquote betrayed by M, and now he's a secret hacker. For some reason, during this talk, things turn a little bit gay.
We can either eat each other.
The two eventually go outside, where Bond sees Severine tied up. Silva puts a glass of whiskey on Severine's head and forces Bond to play a game. Whoever knocks the glass off her head first with a gun wins. So Bond takes the first shot and misses. Silva wins the game by shooting the girl and she falls over and the glass falls off her head, so Silva wins. After this, James Bond gets angry and kills all the gangsters, leaving Silva alone. It turns out that Bond also has some backup because he radioed for help a lot earlier. If you've already watched this movie, you know that Silva wants to get captured so he can get closer to M. So knowing his plan, I would have definitely killed James Bond first. The helicopters would still come and you'd still get captured. You just wouldn't have to worry about James Bond anymore. While Silva is kept in confinement, he's visited by M and they have a conversation. It turns out M betrayed him back all those years ago in Hong Kong and gave him up in exchange for 6 other agents. And he didn't even know this, so he protected her secrets despite being tortured. He even tried to kill himself with a cyanide pill, and it failed, leaving him mangled. At this point, I almost feel bad for Silva, and it makes him seem less like a villain and more like the good guy. Later, Bond and Q attempt to access Silva's computer. However, this turns out to be a trap set by Silva, and he hacks into their system and releases himself, where he's able to escape through the London Underground. My only concern for the villain is that there's multiple guards watching him at all times, so if he releases himself when one of the guards is looking at him, he might get shot while leaving the cage. Eventually, Bond and Q track Silva into a subway, where Bond is forced to jump onto the train and chase Silva through it. Eventually, he quarters Silva, but Silva has a little surprise in the form of a train for him. Using this distraction, Silva is able to escape the underground and hop into a police vehicle filled with other henchmen disguised as officers. Here, Silva and the crew attempt to go to M's trial, where they plan to kill her. Silva gets there just as M is finishing her speech, so he comes in and takes a shot. However, the first shot is blocked by someone standing up. He then hesitates on the second shot and then completely misses it. The mistake the villain made is they had plenty of time to prepare, and the only thing they brought was a pistol. Instead, I would bring machine guns and light the entire room full of bullets. This would for sure kill M before James Bond can arrive. Or even better, they should have brought some sort of pipe bomb or grenades and just chucked it into the room and left. This would for sure blow up M as well. Unfortunately for the villains, because they took so long, Bond gets there just in time and pops the fire extinguishers, giving M a smokescreen and allowing her to escape. After escaping, Bond brings M to his childhood home where they meet Bond's old caretaker from when he was a kid. And then they rig the house full of traps and prepare to fight Silva and his men for the last time. Remember, Bond and his people don't exactly have the best weapons, so this should be pretty easy for Silva, right? Well, not exactly, because Silva and the villains in this movie are fucking idiots. When they send in the first wave of men, they don't bring any explosives. The men are only armed with machine guns, and they walk up to the house and get ambushed by James Bond, who's in a car that has machine guns attached to it. They should have definitely had at least one person with a rocket launcher in case this happened. That way they could just blow up the car James Bond is in and then kill everyone on the inside of the house. The remaining soldiers in the first wave eventually get blown up by various traps, and the first wave is defeated. It's actually quite smart for the villain to send people in multiple waves. That way, their opponent might expend all their resources on the first wave, allowing the second wave to have a much easier time. Eventually, the second wave of men arrived at the house, except this time it's by helicopter, and they immediately start spraying the house full of bullets. But for some reason, Silva and his men come out of the helicopter to chase M on foot just when they're about to kill her. This gives Bond enough time to create a giant explosive which blows up the helicopter and allows Bond, M, and his caretaker to escape through a secret tunnel. Silva is at least smart enough to know that they did not actually die in that giant explosion, and that they probably ran off through a secret tunnel, which they did. So he looks around and sees M walking around with a flashlight. So they chase after and they meet James Bond in the middle of a frozen lake, but Silva monologues for way too long, and this allows James Bond to grab the henchman's gun and escape by shooting out the ice. Silva then walks to the church to try to kill M, but this is obviously a mistake, because you know James Bond would never lose a one-on-one. What Silva should have done is basically spawn camp James Bond for when he comes out of the ice and immediately just shoot and kill him. That way he could do whatever he wanted with M now that James Bond is dead. While inside the church, Silva tries to get M to kill them both by holding a gun to both their heads. But since he didn't kill James Bond earlier, James Bond spoils his plans by throwing a knife into his back. And this is where our villain loses. But what is one way our villain could have easily won without even having to get his own hands dirty? Well, we know that this villain is one of the best hackers in the world, and he can hack literally everything, including the MI6 headquarters, which means it's very realistic he probably could have hacked the military and sent a tactical nuke or some sort of tactical missile straight to the house and just blew everyone up. However, since he doesn't do this, M ends up dying in Bond's arms instead of by suicide, and Bond goes back to his office, where he's given yet another mission. And that's where the Skyfall movie ends. If you enjoyed this series where I teach the villain how he could have potentially won the movie, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more. And also leave a comment on what movie you want to be done next, whether it's a Bond film or any other film you want the villain to win. I just want to say I really appreciate all the supports my viewers have been giving me recently. None of this would be possible without you bros. And with that being said, I just want to say this is Andrew from Obsessive Films signing out, and have a great 4th of July.
I'm on the move, can't stop me if you try.